Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? This is Tamiro. I see that.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we see the representative from Exploding Bacon, which is great. Hey, hello. So I will turn on basically my camera. So hello, everyone. This is Tamiro again. For whom doesn't know, I'm the founder of this conference. I said it before in the lecture of 1678 that we made an history today, that we brought 2 international teams to participate in MAC, which is stands for Media, Awards, and Community. And our goal is promote the awareness for all the subjects and topics that around the robot. It's not building the robot, not designing and everything, programming, the things that around the robot. Because, you know, the goal of FRC is not only develop people who can build a robot, it's also to develop people with values and everything. And I'm a little bit excited, so can't forget what I want to say. So today we made a history with 1678 and now we are going to make another history with team 1902 Exploding Bacon from Florida, United States, that they will be our next lecture, and they are a Hall of Fame team from class of 2019, if I remember correct. So you're still the newest Hall of Fame team, if I remember well. So welcome, shalom. We say also in Israel, ברוכים הבאים. I don't want to speak so much because I had a rough day and a long day. So I will not speak more. I will present you. So all the way from Florida, United States, we are welcoming the Hall of Fame team, 1902 Exploding Bacon. Guys, the stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We are Exploding Bacon, Team 1902 from Central Florida. We were the 2019 recipients of the World Championship Chairman's Award at the Houston World Championship. My name is Ruhi. I am a sophomore in college and alum of the team studying engineering, and I was the chairman's lead for 2 years on the team and was on the chairman's presenting team for 4 years. So I have a little bit of insight into what goes on in the room and the process leading up to that. With me today, I have 3 students currently on the team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Nicholas. I am the current co-president of Exploding Bacon, and I am a senior in high school.
I'm Jess. I am a rising senior, just like Nick. I am on the business and marketing sub-team on Exploding Bacon, and I also was a chairman's presenter in 2019.
Hi, my name is Neil. I'm an incoming freshman in high school. This is my 2nd year on the team, and I'm part of the mechanical and outreach sub-team.
Awesome. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. These are just some hashtags. If you want to post on social media, use them, and we will see the message, and we will be able to engage with it. So we are going to go over some of the basics of just submitting chairmans. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the award if you have submitted before, but the entire content of the submission lies in exemplifying the true meaning of FIRST through measurable impact, with an emphasis on promoting STEM through FIRST programs. So that is kind of the only direction they give you in the definition guide, which can at times be frustrating, but it leaves a lot of room to be creative with your submission, definitely. Then there is a requirement that you field a drivable robot, which I hope is not an issue. And then they really emphasize putting on your accomplishments within the last 5 years and over a sustained period. So that doesn't mean that they don't want to hear about a project that you started back in 2007 that you have been working on this entire time, but more of any new events that have happened in the last 5 years. They want to hear about those rather than events that may have stopped existing a while before that threshold. So keep your content relevant is the only thing that's saying. And then there is a definition list for terms, and we'll get into that a little bit more later, but essentially that is a link. If you go to the website on First Inspires, that's a link to the specific terms that we should be using, that all teams should be using when they are presenting chairmans. So these are terms like assisting, mentoring, publishing resources, hosting events like this one, and it provides that full definition of what those words actually mean and helps us standardize it across all teams and all events. So definitely refer to those and use those if those are relevant, and it kind of builds that credibility with judges as well when you're using those definitions and being able to show evidence of that. Speaking of evidence, there is a documentation form that is new to 2020, sorry. So that's something that we implemented this past season, and after speaking to the teams that did go to events and did end up using them, I mean, I think all events chose winners of the Chairman's Award for their event-specific teams, but they really valued having this documentation form. So what it is, if you haven't gotten a chance to take a look, or if you weren't able to submit chairmans this past year, it is a huge document that lets you say, these are all the teams that we mentored, and it asks for evidence to support that. So a letter from those teams that you worked with, or it might ask for, let's say you did an outreach event and you had 50 people show up. It's some place that you can really document that in a clear manner. So judges are going to be able to see, okay, this team really did this event, and they have the evidence to prove it beyond whatever you say in the judging room. So the documentation form is itself optional. It's not a requirement, and it is a lot of extra work, but it does show for the extra work when you are able to really say, yes, we did all of these things and here are all the numbers, and then you can't argue with that, right? However, if you do claim to have mentored or assisted teams, then you must submit letters of proof from those teams that you mentored acknowledging that. So definitely look into those semantics, and those can be important in helping build that credibility for your team. So once again, go to firstinspires.org. That's the first place you should go. There's a lot of resources on there, including the past winners submissions, including our submission. You'll be able to see our essay, our executive summaries, our presentation is recorded and on that website. And you also have all of the past winners at all of the regional and district events, or district championship events for the last however many years, they're on there. So if you want to go to the district event page that you are attending and see who's won in the past years, do these judges have a trend in who they're picking, and you want to maybe play a game, build a strategy towards how are the teams that are winning doing this, then you can go through it and actually see what they submitted. It's all online. And then those are also links to the resources that I talked about before. And finally, the video consent and release of rights form, that's very important, and you will not be able to submit for the award if you don't submit that. And Neil will talk about that later. These are all hyperlinked, but obviously you can't reach them right now. So I want to emphasize that this presentation is on our website, so don't stress about getting images or anything like that, because it's all on our website and you'll be able to access this after the presentation. So going back to some of the changes from this past season, 2020, once again, we have the new documentation form. There is a new term that is on that definition list that is something that we liked to use a lot in 2019, and it's the term reached. So that is just a more generic term for the people that you were able to have engaged with any material. We mostly use this for social media. For example, our social media post, our First Like a Girl post, reached this many people. It's also been used effectively in terms of events. So if you had a robot at an event and you had this many people watching, then that is a appropriate use of the term. Once again, documentation letters, video consent and release form, and then interview times. So in the past, interview times were selected at the event, at least in all the events that we've been to and at World Championship. So you had to go, and it was a very stressful thing to sign up for a slot. And it was always like, oh, which slot should we pick? Different teams have different strategies. But now, at least in 2020, it was all supposed to be pre-scheduled, and it will continue to be pre-scheduled. So just be aware of that change. So this is Chairman's at a glance in terms of what we actually have to submit for the award. There is a written submission, which consists of 13 questions. If I reference executive summaries, that is what I'm talking about, those 13 short form questions. And then there is an essay that is 10,000 characters. Then there is a video submission that is 1 to 3 minutes, and interviews, which is actually what happens inside the room. It is a 12-minute total interview, 7 minutes for the presentation, the remaining time for the Q&A. However, I have been in rooms where we have been in there for up to 25 minutes. Definitely that is a flexible time. However, that 7-minute cutoff is strict. So the Q&A time can fluctuate depending on how much time the judges have to speak with you, but definitely plan for 7. You will have at least 7 minutes in that room. And then you can have 3 student team members go in, plus an adult mentor. So we actually have never had an adult mentor ever go into a chairman's room with us. The rule was actually allowed to have an adult mentor go in in 2015. But the first event that we tried that new rule out, the first event of that season, they actually didn't even know about that rule change. So when our mentor tried to go into our room, they said, nope, stop, you're not allowed in the room, following the old year's rules. And she didn't want to argue with the judges, of course. So since then, we just haven't really needed a mentor in there. I know some teams really value it to be able to take notes and bring things up later on, but it's definitely up to you, and it doesn't have a negative or a positive reaction for the judges in any way. Okay, so this is kind of an approach to how we treat culture in general on our team, not necessarily just chairman's, but definitely how we build that story. So firstly, we have a strategic planning meeting. So what that is a meeting that we have with the entire team and all of our mentors in June, in the early summer, where we, after championships, get to debrief, talk about what went well this season, what do we need to change for the coming year, and some of the long-term goals that we want to make and those strategic changes as a team, as an organization, how do we want to improve? And this is something that I highly recommend your team does in some way or shape. It doesn't need to be a day-long, week-long event. Like at times it gets a little intense on Exploding Bacon, but it just is a way to really assess where you are and think about the next steps before you jump into the next season, in the next off season, where during the off season, I think we end up doing more work for chairmans than actually during that build season or the weeks before the submission deadline. With regards to the strategic planning, it definitely is not just a outreach thing as well, or a chairman's thing. We also definitely talk about changes to the robot, and that is just an overall good way to talk about all the different subsections of your team and how you want to improve. That's a place that we talk about the mission statement, goals, values. It's just something to frame your team and helps you make decisions later on. Should we go to this event? Is this part of our mission? Is this something that's valued to the team? And helps build that message before you have to be able to convey it to a set of judges, and being able to make sure all your students are on the same page about the location and the place that your team is at that moment in time. We are also, I think that we're a unique team in the way that we have embraced our image as part of the chairman's submission. That's something that is kind of relatively new. Not a lot of teams really talk about imagery during chairman's. It's not really typical spreading first, typical spreading outreach kind of methodology, but that's something that in our chairman's presentation we have talked about. We dedicated an entire section to talking about another presentation that we give about image and marketing, and it's kind of been something that's been built into our team of having a recognizable logo, building programs like First Like a Girl that have taken off on social media. So that kind of goes back to the entire thing of chairman's being flexible. So really being able to figure out what does your team do well, and finding a way to see if that fits into chairman's. So it's definitely not a, how many FRC teams have you started? How many outreach events have you gone to? How much international outreach have you done? It is not a cut and dry way to approach chairman's, but I strongly believe that it is flexible. And finally, document everything. We take a lot of pride in being able to say that every single outreach hour that we talk about is accounted for in a big spreadsheet. Every single event we go to is accounted for. Every team that we assist is accounted for. We have documentation on documentation on documentation. And Nick will show you a little bit about how we organize that. So I will pass it on to Nick.
All right, hello. I'm going to briefly go over some available resources for chairmen and how you might document your progress throughout the whole year. While I'd love it if you look at our resources on explodingbacon.com, that's our website, we are only one example of a successful team. You definitely want to look at some others as well. There's a lot of ways to go about the chairman's process. We tend to submit materials in our skit, our essay, our presentation, that are more lighthearted, a little casual. We focus on, making sure the judges don't get bored with our submission because it's a lot of numbers that we're throwing at them. Other successful teams, such as 2614 Mars, have one with a little bit more of a dramatic, measured, professional, and slow presentation style, and really just kind of find what works for you as far as that is concerned. Up here, if you look at the slide, we have the Symbot series seminar. It's a great example of a strong chairman's approach from another Hall of Fame team. That would be 1114, the Symbotics. This presentation with Karthik from 1114 goes really in depth on the individual elements of the chairman's submission in a bit more detail than we're able to provide in this presentation. It's about 2 hours long. You can find it on the YouTube page or on the resources page of our website, explodingbacon.com again. You can also find all the past submissions online using the Blue Alliance page, which is essentially, you guys are probably familiar with the Blue Alliance for match statistics and the robot side stuff, but the Blue Alliance is also really helpful. They have this great Hall of Fame page where they have the essays, the videos, and also a lot of the skits and presentations from the recent Hall of Fame inductees. And that's really great because you're able to see the whole elements of their submission and what made them really stand out to the judges. As you go back through the years on that page, it gets a little more scarce. You start to not see as many, but for the past 10 years or so, there's definitely some great materials there. There's going to be a Hall of Fame, an official Hall of Fame webpage. We're going to put that up on our social media when that is all finished. And so once that is there, that's going to have all of the different available resources that you can possibly get for all the different Hall of Fame teams and all of their program submissions and a little bit about them in addition to that.
And I just want to jump in real quick. When we say resources, it's a lot more than just our essay, our executive summaries, and our presentation and our video, of course. It also includes it includes our full judges packet that we have and that we give to the judges in the room and we present in the pit. So that also has all of our documentation, all of our methodology, and I would highly recommend checking that out.
Yes, that is on our website as well, which is excellent. Okay, so another place you can go for help with your chairman submission is Chief Delphi, which is an online community of FRC students, mentors, and alumni, including some chairman's enthusiasts who would be very happy to help you with any questions about the award or submission process. Something that we focus on a lot on 1902 is including our alumni in the process of reviewing our chairman's submission. And we normally have a date sometime in, I believe, and Ruby can correct me on this, I believe it's sometime in January-ish when we will send out our submission materials to alumni on our team that were involved in chairman's, and they will report back to us with their feedback, and we'll be able to use that to polish our submission in a very similar way. And that kind of just leans into, tons of people are going to be willing to help you with your chairman submission and with the research process and documentation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to your alumni, reach out to really anyone you know who could provide some assistance there with the chairman's process. All right, so just a little disclaimer. Some things that we're going to suggest might not be entirely doable for everybody. This is just what has worked best for our team in the past. Keeping your own unique circumstances in mind, we hope you'll be able to find an approach that works well for your team and by using our resources guide. So here we go. So 1902 likes to start planning our submission very far in the advance of the deadline in February. We typically start documenting our progress as soon as the previous season is over, and we'll hold meetings throughout the summer and early fall to guide the direction of our outreach programs, in addition to strategic planning and different programs will try to guide the direction of our outreach programs, guide our documentation, guide kind of what we're looking at for chairmans for the next year, all the way back in the summer or early fall. We focus a lot on documentation because we want all of our accomplishments to be at our fingertips when we're actually creating the chairman's presentations and essays and videos. And we want to make sure that everything is really right there, because when you get to build season and it gets really hectic and you're building a robot and you're building your chairman's resume and stuff, it gets really a lot, and you're submitting maybe for Woody Flowers and Dean's List, all the different awards. It's nice to really have everything at your fingertips there. We create spreadsheets, like Ruhi said earlier, of all of our team outreach hours broken down by student, event, and date. We track social media statistics of First Like a Girl. We'll track the number of Spark kits we sent out, which is our International Science Kits program. By keeping everything organized, it just makes everything much easier. I highly encourage go on Google Sheets or Excel and just get everything laid out in a nice spreadsheet like that. So one more thing for this slide here, we do like to figure out where each piece of information fits best into our submission. This is pretty variable depending on your team's submission style. So it's kind of something you might have to figure out on your own. We typically like to put more stories and emotional anecdotes in the skit, because that works best for us, because we have a lot of content to jam into that essay, and the character counts are pretty tough to hit as it is. But other teams have been successful doing completely the opposite. So it really is up to you. Just figure it out and plan accordingly, and make sure that you are getting all your information into your submission, because what you don't tell the judges, they can't evaluate in your application at all. They can't make decisions based on what they don't have. So I think we're ready to go on to the next slide. So next up, defining your story. We find it very valuable to create a very cohesive narrative for the judges to follow across all of the materials that we submit. By weaving together our essay, our judges packet, and our skit with some common elements, some theming elements, they become more memorable to the judges, and they're going to remember us. The judges have a very limited amount of time to go over each presentation, each essay, each executive summaries and judges packet. They just don't have very much time to look at them. So it's really important to make sure that it's connecting in a way that allows it to form something that they're going to remember. So for example, we kind of stumble into a theme a lot of years, and our theme in 2019 was One Mission. So our skit was framed around team scientists launching the first rocket into the stars with the help of our social programs and the help of our outreach. So by having this theme, it allows us to create a much more memorable experience across different mediums and really wow the judges especially with our skit. I think, you do have to leave a lasting impression on the judges. You can't control whether they are hungry or they are tired or they are, you only get really a couple of chances at the event. And by bombarding them with information at every chance that you get, you're going to eventually maybe hit them in the right way, and when they're in the right state of mind to really appreciate the work that your team has done. So moving a little bit into the team image, which Ruhi talked about a little earlier, we also feel the team image can really help you be memorable with your presentation. So our Pig in a Rocket logo, which is on my t-shirt here, if you can see, is a little silly, but it is very easy to see from far away, and it's very memorable. And if you see it a couple of times, you're probably going to remember it for a little while. And we've worked very hard in our local area to establish a connection between this Pig in a Rocket logo and a hardworking team that is dedicated to inspiring the world. And by taking time to cultivate that kind of predisposition in the heads of our local community, hopefully our local judges will have a little bit of a positive predisposition about us and about our team, and they'll remember us as we submit year after year after year that, oh, this is the team with those awesome programs and that awesome logo, and we think they have some really cool stuff to say. So we're going to sit up a little bit straighter in our seats and really focus on what this team has to say. And that, I think, helps keep their attention when they are reading your essay, watching your presentation, and getting everything really ready to go. One of the last things that another disclaimer is that chairman's isn't really earned in a year. So the youngest Hall of Fame team ever is 31-32. That's Thunder Down Under, and they were 7 years old. when they won Chairman's at Worlds. So second, third year teams, if you're out there, don't worry if it's your first, second, third time applying for the Chairman's Award, you don't get it. You are competing against teams that have had years to build their programs and dozens of chances to refine their submissions through trial and error. Exploding Bacon didn't win our first Chairman's Award until our 5th year with First, and creating a winning submission took a lot of effort. So don't get discouraged, keep at it, work hard to improve. The awards will come eventually. Last thing on this slide is the first team support definition words. Now, before I was actually prepping for this presentation, I didn't know what these were either, but First actually has a chairman's document laid out on their website. And basically they have some words for mentored, assisted, and I think like started, founded, different. They have their own definition. So make sure you take a look at the document on their website and that you're getting the correct definition, so that if you have maybe are giving yourselves less credit in the eyes of the judges than you actually deserve, that you actually founded a team, that you actually are mentoring a team, whereas you're just saying, oh, we just helped them a little bit, but maybe in First eyes and at the judge's eyes, the word assisted or mentored means something a little bit different than what it might mean intuitively to you. But now I think we're ready for the next slide. So this is a page of our example, some documentation, internal documentation that we use on Exploding Bacon. If you direct your attention to the letters on the left-hand side, far left-hand column, that just signifies where we have used the information. J for judges packet, EX for executive summaries, and ES for essay. We just have in the center column, we just have what it is, and in the right-hand side, we just have, dates, numbers, some important information. So essentially, you don't have to do it exactly this way, but we do encourage that you make sure you keep track of where everything is in your submission and what you're putting in there, so that you don't put a bunch of unnecessary overlap, and that you make sure that everything your team does is actually in some part of your presentation. Everything you want to share with the judges is actually there without missing anything and then potentially having some trouble. Right, so the last page we have is Chairman's Culture. So this slide is Chairman's Culture, but in reality, culture is just a big part of the Chairman's Award. So it's very challenging to define some of the time, so I'm just going to go quickly over a couple things that we feel are helpful to craft an inspiring culture. These are not the only things you need to do, just a couple of observations. Firstly, celebrate what makes your team unique when you're planning out your outreaches and programs for the next year. Focus on initiatives that your team members are very passionate about. If you have students and mentors with passion for teaching programming, for example, start a coding camp. If you have a lot of fundraising experience, teach other teams how they can fundraise and how they can get great sponsors too. As you commit to programs, remember that the Chairman's Award should really only be a bonus for your efforts, and that the real prize is doing good in the world. Second, recognize the accomplishments of students and that have helped you with the Chairman's Award. We give out some little awards at the end of the year during our end of year dinner, and those are just a little helpful way to recognize the people that have done some great work for our team in all parts of the team, and including the chairman's business side in that is really, really important to making sure that those people are appreciated, as well as the fun and cool robot stuff. There's also a lot of value in the outreach and chairmans. So we make sure also to support our presenters at the events. We try to make sure they have as painless of an event process as possible while they're prepping for their presentation. And we also make sure that everyone's included at least a little bit in our chairman's process. Everybody has to read the essay. Everybody goes over the skit at least once so they can provide some feedback on that. Many students are interested in helping with chairmans and might not, know what it is. I know I was in that camp for a while, and it's helpful as long as you just make sure that everybody has a little bit of access to it. Very, very last thing, if you can, try to make sure that your team leadership, and especially the lead students on your team, embrace your chairman's culture, because if they start to embrace chairman's culture, if they want to really go for this award, then everyone else in your team is kind of going to follow suit within a couple of months, and it's going to fall into place. And with that, I'm going to send it on to the wonderful Jessica Fuller to explain our essay and presentation in a bit more detail.
Okay, thank you. So the chairman's essay, it's 10,000 characters. The executive summary is 500 characters. So you want to get the submission info for those as soon as it comes out, as quickly as possible, so that you're best prepared to prepare those things. You can be creative in the essay. The thing about it is that the executive summaries is kind of shorter. You don't have a lot more room to show off what your team has done. But in the chairman's essay, you can really elaborate on those, and you really get to elaborate and draw to your strengths of the team. So if you like list something in bullet points in the executive summaries, you can go into the story of how it was created in your chairman's essay. And you have room for creativity there. And tell your story. We can go to the next slide. So the interview, just to recap what Ruhi said earlier, it's limited to 12 minutes, 7 minutes for the presentation, and generally 5 minutes for Q&A. 3 students plus an adult mentor is optional. Now you definitely want to shoot for going under time more than risking going over time, because they will cut you off at 7 minutes if you start to go over, and you really want to get that impactful conclusion in there, which is the most important part that you don't want the judges to miss. We actually do a strategy where we shoot to go under time so that we have more time to do questions. We find that valuable, and the timing will just come with good scripting and practice, making sure the speakers are very familiar with your script for the skit. You want to have you want to bring your confirmation of submission to the event, definitely. Get all your papers in order there. Get your interview time, but as Ruhi said, that has been changed, so they are pre-planned with those times. Now, an optional thing that you can do is bringing visual aids into the interview with you. But the thing you have to remember is that the judge's attention will always be on the speakers first. So if you do bring visual aids, they can definitely add a lot of impact to your presentation. For example, we brought in a big board with a scattering of all the teams we'd helped. But the thing about that is you have to make it, you can be creative with it, but they have to clearly express the ideas the visual aids are trying to get across, and there can be no small text because the judges aren't going to stop to read it. We also bring handouts into our interview, which again, the judges aren't really going to read it while you're doing the presentation. They're going to be focused on you, but we find it a little helpful for afterwards when they're trying to go over things amongst themselves. They can just flip through the judges binder to the section that we were talking about, like, oh, what did they say about this program? And they can flip through the resources we gave them and find what we were referring to. But attention will always mainly be on the speakers, so important information should definitely be reiterated orally. Next slide. Okay, great. So when you are auditioning your speakers to see who you want to actually give the presentation, you want to include not only the presentation that you're auditioning with, but you also want to add in questions there so you can see how they react under pressure. And they can be vague ones, specific ones, because you never really know what they're going to say in the presentation. You need to practice the questions as much as you practice the presentation, definitely. Because it's just, if you practice the questions, you will eventually fall into patterns so that you know exactly what to say on different topics, so that when you're actually in the room, there's less stuttering or thinking of exactly which words to use, and you can just go to the answer that you've practiced. Personal stories are a must here. They definitely catch the attention of judges, and they create a lot more impact because people can relate to them. So grill your speakers if they have any personal stories that tie into any of the programs that you're talking about, or if they've been to any specific outreach that are asking questions about. They can tie in those personal stories. but you definitely want to utilize your time most effectively. So for questions, you never want to be caught off guard. So what we did is, since we never want to be caught off guard, we want the speakers to know all the information, but knowing all the information in the essay, in the executive summaries, and the presentation is a lot. So we had each speaker have like a specialty section for our different programs. So if they ask a question about this, this speaker takes the question. If they ask a question about this speaker can answer. Because you never want to waste time on Q&A, and always have an answer to the question if they ask you if you have anything else to share with them, so that you're never wasting time with open-ended questions and you always utilize all that time effectively. You can go to the next slide. Okay, you want to prepare your entire team for the chairman's presentation, not just your speakers. So every team member should at least have a general idea of what your chairman's presentation is like. And you can do that in a number of ways. You can do trivia games. We have a trivia game night sometimes where it's just questions about the team and the outreach that we're showing off. We also like to present our chairman's presentation, have the speakers present to the entire team, and we make our team read the essay that we submit. So they just have, if they absorb anything, they absorb some information that they can share with judges. We also have a 15-hour outreach requirement from before the competition at demos, so everyone that is present in the pit is well versed on how to talk to people about FIRST and about the team, because judges come by the pit, the speakers won't be there to give their amazing answers, but the people in the pit still have to know. So we have judges packets in the pit for them to go to, resources they can just point to, so the information will be there. We also have big poster boards along the walls of our pit with little visual representations of information, like we have all about FIRST Like a Girl in like 10 seconds on this poster board. We have our pre-planning meeting outline over here on this poster board. And every student in the pit should also have those personal stories to tie into questions. And they don't have to be well rehearsed, but you should have them at least think about what they might say, anything to tie in personal experiences, because that's kind of the money zone there when answering questions. And as always, judges are always watching, so be sure to be on your best behavior throughout the competition, wherever you are, because you never know when a judge will be there watching your team.
Last thing to wrap up Jess's section, just something that we say a lot internally is amateurs practice until they get it right and professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. And that's something to keep in mind when your chairman's team is practicing. We practice a lot leading up to the actual presentation during the event, which means Thursday, Friday, the entire day. Our chairman's room is off in some little corner of the event and we are practicing. And we actually do practice the Q&A section more than the actual presentation itself. But definitely try to make all your presenters feel comfortable. I know the Q&A portion can be the most nerve-wracking. You don't know what they'll ask you, but really practicing an entire timed Q&A portion's gonna work with that as well, because your presenters will have to know how to answer questions succinctly and be able to cover a wide array of topics so that you can feel proud of what you answer during your question and answer period. I'll pass it off to Neil now to wrap it up with the video section.
Thank you, Ruby. So there's a required video that you have to give the judges at the start of the presentation. This video is used to explain what your team has done to deserve the award. Exploding Bacon has never shown our video during the presentation, and we recommend not to waste time presenting it. An important thing is to read all the rules that are on the First Inspire's website, such as what format your video would be, what to do and what not to do, content guidelines, and USB requirements. Make sure that you have tested that your USB drive works, and make sure to put your flash drive in a plastic bag, along with a sticker on your flash drive and a sticker on your bag showing which team you are, as well as the video disclosure agreement in the bag. Make sure to print out extras and bring them to your event. Next slide, please. Moving on to the chairman's documentation form, you have to list all the events that you have documentation for. For more info regarding this, you can go to the official chairman's definition site. Make sure to label each piece of documentation with an ID and to attach the pieces of documentation to this form. Next slide. To make an effective presentation, you have to know what the judges are looking towards in a team. The most important things judges are looking for are teams that have sustained excellence over time. Like Nick was saying, 3132 is a 10-year-old team, and they're still the youngest team to have ever won chairman's. They won it when they were 7 years old. This is not a one-year thing, and it can seem a little daunting at first, but remember that they did it, so you can too. Judges will be looking for teams that most accurately represent first, the experience you have of industry professionals, what makes you the team that can most accurately represent first, and also a team that is always communicating, and new criteria. The judges will most likely be able to pick a team that represents what FRC is all about, helping and educating as many people as you can about STEM, and communication is a big key to that. Make sure that you have people working on outreach and PR to make sure that your team most accurately represents the FRC mission and that your team is always in the best light. There are multiple resources. Next slide. Ruby, I think this is your slide.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neil.
Oh, okay. There are multiple resources such as these ones and more on our website, including this PowerPoint and our full 2019 submissions. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to us by email about anything at info@explodingbacon.com or any of our social media channels. We also highly recommend that your team make your own profile on FRC Alliances, which is basically a directory of international teams that answer questions about anything regarding FRC. This is a great way to start your own outreach by helping other teams. Thank you so much for listening, and now we will be able to take questions.
Yep, so any questions you guys may have about the presentation, about any of our outreach specifically, we didn't get into a lot of the content that we actually presented, but we are ready.
Thank you very much for taking part in my conference. It's very, we're so glad to have you guys and be with you. And thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting this event. We're happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will go back to this slide. I breezed over it just in terms of time, but if there aren't any questions, these are just some important tips coming from a past chairman's lead, chairman's mentor, I'd say for now, to keep in mind when you're talking about chairmans to the judges and how to maintain that culture internally. I know if you aren't a chairman's team yet, it's hard to just become one season. So definitely understanding that it is a team effort and it's not just a few people. It's actually probably not what you think on Exploding Bacon. We don't have 20 people lined up at the door trying to write an essay after school, after being in school for 8 hours writing essays. So just like on, I'm sure, a lot of teams, we've also faced those similar struggles of having not as many students wanting to participate, but it really comes down to explaining the value of the award, the fact that this award has been the reason that we've been able to compete at World Championship for many years, the reason that it's helped us give back to our community, and it's given us an outlet to do more than just what we're doing in our build season, giving a way for our students to connect. All of those things are amazing reasons that even if you don't have winning the award in mind, they're just, it's a way to document everything that your team is doing. And by wanting to start documenting, you're going to want to start having something to document about. So yes. So I see questions now in the chat. Do we have any tips for editing the video? So I think, first of all, don't stress about the video. I know, I mean, like, even looking at Team Integro's video last year, or 2019, our year, that video was amazing, right? They put so much time and energy into that video, and it was amazing, an amazing result. But the priority should not be in the video, because that is not a judged assessment. In terms of actually editing the video, let's say you got everything under control and you're able to do that. You're able to nail everything else. We have never outsourced for editing the video, so we've only had students do it before. I think we approach the video in a way that we have video meetings, and we kind of storyline the entire process earlier in advance. So we will start this process probably even before we start the essay, just so that we know what shots we want to get. That's a big thing that we have transitioned to doing the past couple years since I've been on the team, is we just haven't had any good content to put in the video, meaning photos, video. So I highly recommend that you try to get as much moving content as possible. Videos are a lot more effective than those photos. So if you have the content, then it's a lot easier to frame your video. If you watch our video from this past year, we kind of approach the video in a way of, this is why we won the award. This is what we have to show all of you audience members, the reason that we won the award, because no one knows what's going on in the presentation room. Chances are most of the people in the audience haven't read our essay. They don't even know what team we are, maybe. They just know our robot in the field, our cheers. They don't know all the outreach we do. So think about that 3-minute video as being an explanation of why you won. You don't need to go over every number, every detail, but it's just a highlight reel of everything. So filling that with the good video that you've taken at any outreach events that you've done, any summer camps that you host, and also with a very engaging audio. You don't want people to tune out during your video. I think that the only tips with video is start early. Try to stick to one editing software that a student is comfortable with. Try to really tap into your resources on the team. For example, if there are no students who know video editing, then it's really hard to approach this, and you don't want to have a bad end result. So try to reach out to any adults, any mentors on the team any parents that have experience with video editing, video software. We actually had our video editing software donated to us by a parent, so we didn't end up having to pay for it, things like that. Just try to use the resources that you have on your team. And if not, we've even had local universities reach out to us, and they actually did some editing for our chairman's, or our First Like a Girl videos. So we've had a lot of different resources in the community be offering for video resources. So I'd say if you can't look internally, it's not a bad thing to go external and try to find people that will help you with that. I see another question. Go ahead. Does anyone want to add on to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Can I jump? Yeah. So like I touched on in the presentation, we have the First Alliances website, which is a directory of teams internationally who are willing to help you. We think that you should make a team profile on First Alliances, and then you can talk to different FRC teams all around the world on how they did their video, how they edited their video, anything regarding FRC really. So it's a great resource to help.
Yeah. So First Alliances is not only just for video or outreach stuff. It's also a lot of robot help is sought out there. And there's a lot of websites like that, Chief Delphi. The First community is amazing in the way that you can reach out, and I'm sure most teams will help you. Anything else to add on for that question? Okay. We'll jump into the next one. When are you starting to prepare for the chairman's presentation? So when we had to submit, we would start and I don't know if you're speaking directly about that 7-minute skit that you're talking about. we don't start that honestly until we have probably like a good first draft of the essay. So so that's probably like third week of build, right? Maybe that halfway point, but we don't really like to focus on the presentation that much, depending on what regional you go or what district event you go to. I don't know what the scheduling is like for you all, but if we go to an earlier regional, it does get time gets really pressed right up to leading up to that event. So so that's a very stressful time for us. We don't start the presentation prep until after the essay because we're trying to meet that essay deadline first. So I would say probably about late January, maybe early February is our goal. And obviously that also gets pushed. So we start that process just by writing out the script. And that's entirely based on also what we end up finding our theme is during our essay process. A lot of the theming stuff that we do in our presentation kind of comes about throughout after writing the essay. So anything that we don't get to talk about in the essay, this is actually a good tip. If you have things that you just can't fit into the essay character-wise, take it out and write it on a list of things that you have to put in your presentation. So anything that you can think of that like you had to cut from the essay, make a list and say this has to go in the presentation so that when you're writing the script for your presentation, you can do that. I think in terms of Q&A prep for the presentation, we're kind of doing that consistently. So as soon as the presenters are selected, so our presenters, we actually select them before kickoff. So in December, maybe before we leave for holiday break, we have auditions. So we ask students to read a section of the script from the last year's presentation, and we will ask them questions and answers just like they would have in the room to see how they react under pressure. So that's how we picked Jess. We had Nick audition for fun, even though he was a mechanical captain. So just, it's a good way to just gauge who your students are. And Jess was a new student. She was a rookie when she auditioned for chairman's and got it. So don't be alarmed by.
It was very stressful.
It was not that stressful.
It was,
but
yes, it was.
We tried to emulate the actual judging room experience as much as possible, just so that our presenters get a sense of how it would be like in the actual room. So we'll ask them really open-ended questions. It won't just be like, okay, explain first like a girl to me, but it might be, what makes you the face of first? Very broad, open-ended questions that are very difficult to tackle, but it just gives us a sense of how do they approach the question? Do they pause before they start talking? Do they ramble a lot? Those types of skills. And also another thing that I don't think a lot of people think about when they're selecting their presentation team is the chemistry between the presenters. So we would have, like, if we had one returning member who was going to present, we would have that person stand next to the our new auditioner and test out different combinations of people. Because I think that it really comes down to how well you can bounce ideas off of each other and how well you can finish each other's sentences during Q&A, and be able to have each individual bring something different to the team. Like I can tell you that I was, when I was on the team, I was a fact person. So they would look to me, Jess and our other presenter would look to me for the fact-based numbers questions, but Jess and Jeffrey really brought it home with the personal stories and some of those types of questions that are open-ended and broad. So definitely trying to figure out that an understanding that every single student on the presenting team will have a different style of presenting and have a different strength, and being able to build off of that. So that part is kind of done in December, and we make sure that that's done earlier so that they can be around for the essay writing process as much as possible. Because our presenters are the ones that are going to be drilled. Not only is it important, obviously, for your students in the pit to be ready for judge questions, for engineering inspiration questions or anything like that, but your presenters are going to be the ones who win you that award. So we like to keep them around for the entire essay writing process so they know what's going in the essay, and if anything random in the essay that you don't talk about in your script pops up in a judge's question, someone's able to take it. Also, we kind of ask Q&A prep throughout the build season. I know when we're just sitting there writing an essay or we're taking a break or something, I'll ask a question and say, you got 30 seconds, go. So just to kind of keep everyone on their toes and practice throughout the entire process for questions and answers. I truly believe that is the most important and the most valuable part of your chairman's presentation. Because I have been in rooms where I'm pretty sure the judges did not listen to one thing that came out of our mouth during the 7 minutes, or they were focused on whatever handouts we gave them or other things. So that's also been a struggle, writing a presentation that keeps the focus of the judges, but also understanding that they are not going to be listening to many of the words that come out of your mouth, and trying to find a way to get the important concepts to them. And I think that's best delivered through the Q&A. So that is my spiel on timeline stuff. If there are any other questions, thank you. I see the hands.
Yeah, so if there aren't any other questions, I'm just going to elaborate on a section on our spot drilling of individuals on their chairman's questions. This extends way beyond our presentation team. In 2019, I'm pretty sure I had stepped away from our lathe for I think 2 seconds, and our chairman's mentor just walked up to me and was like, what do you know about Spark? She's like, just going after it. And everybody on the student team is drilled that way, because a judge could approach anyone on your team. A judge could approach the freshman that has been on the team for 6 weeks. And that kid still needs to be able to speak just as well as anyone else in order to get your team come across, because that could be the only interaction that you have on a given day with the judging team. So just beyond the presentation team, make sure everyone possible, students, mentors, even maybe hand out packets to parents, I don't know, but just make sure everybody knows what they're talking about.
I think another thing that we do to alleviate that stress, chairman's was a big thing for us. It was very stressful for a lot of new students. I know even just having conversations, they were very stressed about losing the award for us or things like that were really unnecessarily stressed upon. But even though we do a lot of prep for that, the focus of these students, these newer students, should be building their own story. How did that student find the team? And most of the time it's through an outreach event or a sibling, and that speaks to volumes about what kind of culture your team has. We do practice days during the off-season event, or during off seasons. So we'll say, okay, tonight's going to be after our business meeting or after whatever work needs to be done in the shop. We'll say, okay, we're going to do a 1 hour long elevator pitch session. So we'll practice being able to explain the team, being able to explain first in a 1 minute spiel, and have every student go through that. And if they can't do it in front of their students, in front of their teammates, then they won't most likely be able to do it in front of a set of strangers. If they can't do it in front of a random parent at an outreach event, they probably won't be able to do it under the stress of a blue shirt judge, right? So we really try to make this a year-long thing of being able to comfortably talk. And I think that's just one of the great things about FIRST, right? We say all the students build soft skills, and most of those soft skills come from either prepping for engineering inspiration, prepping for chairmans, prepping for being able to say what this mechanism on your robot does. So I think kind of putting your students on the spot in that comfortable atmosphere of being of a team meeting should be done before you get to an event, a first time event, or that's something that can help them feel more comfortable and also feel comfortable about delivering their own personal story of, oh, I met the team at this event, and this is an event that they actually do every year. And that kind of directs itself right into the content of the team. And I'm sure if I asked Nick how many Spark kits we've sent out, he probably maybe couldn't answer you. So it's not necessary to know every single number, right? It's more important to say, okay, well, I'm not sure how many we have actually sent out, somewhere in the ballpark of 100, but We actually just sent out kits last week to blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So being okay with not knowing all the information and knowing who has the information would be one of the highlights of prepping your students for being ready for a competition.
If I can interject for a second, if you don't know the answer, direct to someone who does, because if you get two people on the team who give judges two different answers, then it starts to seem like you're not really putting out your information in the best way possible. It seems like maybe there's something wrong with your numbers. You want to make sure that there's consistency across what the judges are told. So if a student ever doesn't know the answer, just make sure they send it to one of the presenters, someone who's a little bit more experienced or well-versed with it.
If I could interject in here, every single person who goes in the competition, the chairman's competition with you, they need to be prepared. They need to be confident. They need to be professional, because when they're coming in as a representative of your team, they're representing your team. They're representing what if you could get the award or not. So basically every single person, no matter if it's the presenter, it doesn't matter if it's the presenter, or it doesn't matter if it's just someone on the team who's going along to the competition, they need to be prepared on the same spiel that you're giving the presenters. They need to have this exact same training as the presenters. They need to know everything as the presenters. I'm sorry, I'm talking low. Because they're judges that walk around all the time. There are secret judges who dress up as normal people, and then they go up to your team and ask questions, and then they talk to the real judges, and then they deliberate whether you should get the award or not. You really need to be professional and concise with everyone on your team.
Be nice to everyone at the event. I'm sure we don't have to tell any of you guys that. I'm sure you already are. Yeah. But that's basically just what it means. Just everyone, you're always being judged. Always.
Yeah, and as stressful as that may sound, it's something that if you maintain that culture through the off season, then it should be able to be transferred at an event as well. So I think that is our time. Yeah, if there are any other questions, please feel free to email us. I will probably be answering it if it's chairman's related. We have helped with essay submissions. Actually, 1678's essay submission, they won chairman's at a regional event. We helped them with that. And I'm sure a lot of Hall of Fame teams are willing to help out, possibly. So just reach out if you have any questions. And this presentation is once again available online. All of our resources are available. You can watch Jess and I's presentation from 2 years ago, the winning presentation. Read our entire judges packet. Everything's online. So, yeah, I think that concludes it.
All right.
Yeah,
all right. Thank you
so
for
much,
having
guys.
us.